Welcome to Storybreakers, the show where we come up with a brand new film idea off the top of our heads. My name's Chris Brennan, and today we have a very special series that we're launching. Throughout the month of October, I'm going to be joined by YouTubers, writers, and horror aficionados of all kind to come up with what we think the next installment of the Halloween franchise should be. It ended with Halloween Ends, but we know for a fact that there's going to be a new one coming out, whether it's in 2 years or 5 years. But what exactly is that going to look like? Is that going to be a reboot? Is that going to be a prequel? Is that going to be a sequel? We don't know. So I decided to invite some of the most interested parties when it comes to the Halloween franchise to join me and come up with individual sessions on what we believe our take is on the Halloween franchise. The trick is, we're making this up off the top of our heads. So, joining me today is Drumdums Lee McCoy, and we're going to figure out right now, live on the spot, what we think the next installment of the Halloween franchise should look like. If you enjoy this, then I definitely recommend you check out my YouTube channel, Storybreakers, where I'm going to be joined regularly by a lot of different guests where we come up with original film ideas, reboots, prequels of all kind. So definitely check that out. With that being said, let's get on with the show. Lee, welcome to Storybreakers.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Happy to be here.
Great. So, I guess the first question I have is, what is your relationship with the Halloween franchise?
Oh, man. Jesus. Boy, that's a loaded question. Because sometimes I ask myself that very like, when did this start? Because when I started YouTube, I was already obsessed with the franchise. You know what? I think here's a good starting point. When I was in the military, a good buddy of mine, Larry, this was back in probably 20 years ago. He was a massive Halloween fan. And I think that sort of ignited my love for the franchise. I'd always loved the franchise. But the start of it really, before that, was Halloween 4. Seeing Halloween 4 in the theater opening night, 1988. I was 15 years old. And that sealed the deal and sort of made me want to go back and watch Halloween 1 and 2. Because, like, who is this Michael Myers guy? You know, because Halloween 3 was such a big, misstep to everybody's eyes back then. Even me. And so I kind of given up on the franchise. But after watching Halloween 4, I had to go back and kind of reinvestigate 1 and 2 again. And I just, eventually Halloween 1, the original, became my all-time favorite film. And at that time, I think I started really getting into like how films are made, a director's eye, different things that you don't really think about when you're probably in your teens and younger. And I think this has been a 35 year love affair that I've had with the franchise. Yeah.
And could you tell me about your YouTube channel, Drumdum?
Yeah. I always wanted to talk about movies. That was kind of the big thing. And I used to watch like Siskel and Ebert and stuff like that growing up in the 80s. And I remember even back then when I was really, really young, I was just like, oh man, I would love to do that. That sounds so cool. But in my mind, I thought it was unachievable. Like there's no way I could ever do what they're doing. And then here comes YouTube. And I started seeing, reviewers on there like Stuckman and Jeremy Johns and Flick Pick and Smozno. I think those were the big four that I started with. And, thank God for those guys because it made me think, hey, if they can do this, I can do this. And so it took me a few years, but 2015 is when I started and I was scared to death. And I thought, what the hell am I doing? I still remember as I was recording my first review, I was like, why am I doing this? This is insanity. And I never realized how hard it is to talk in front of the camera, at least at that time.
Right.
But luckily there was my love for movies that kept me going. And I said, you know what, I can get through this. And that's what I did. And it took me quite a few videos to finally find my comfort zone with it. But it's just one of those things that it's just, I never get sick of talking about movies. I think that's why I still do it.
Yeah, it's funny. So I've seen all the Halloween films except for 5 and 6 until about 2 months ago. I never got to those two. And then a couple of months ago, I watched those. So I basically, I watched the most recent ones, then I went back, and then I caught number 4, and I was like, that's actually a pretty decent ending in the 4th one. And I was like, let's finally see what the chaos is of these other 2. And that actually is what gave me the idea to do this entire series of where do you go next? Because those 2 entries just opened up in a completely different pathway that I wasn't aware of. I heard of something about the cults, but I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many different strands to this. And it's such a storied franchise. Of course, they're going to make another one, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 2 years. But what actually will they do with it? And you actually have a relationship with Halloween 6, don't you? Didn't you do like a new edit of the Halloween 6?
Yeah, I've always been kind of obsessed with Halloween 6. That's that's another one I saw in the theater opening night, and I remember from the get-go, it was Donald Pleasance. That was his last movie, and seeing the theatrical cut at the very end, when you just see the mask and the syringe on the floor, and you just hear Donald, Loomis's like screaming, and that always kind of stuck with me, that ending. But just the overall look of Halloween 6. It's like the most atmospheric movie. I think it's like the darkest movie of the bunch. And I think it's underrated as far as like how well it's shot. So but then the producer's cut came out 19 years later. There was always a bootleg going around, and I did buy that bootleg, but the quality was so freaking bad that I couldn't like connect. And then when it finally came on Blu-ray, I think in 2014, and it just looked glorious, I was like, oh wow, this really is 2 very different versions of the movies, at least from the last act standpoint. And I thought to myself, wow, there's things that I love about the producer's cut, but there's things that I love about the theatrical cut. Why don't I try to make the best version of that I can? Which is what I did. I prefer the theatrical final act, but there was things about the producer's cut that I thought, just from a filmmaking standpoint, were a little bit classier, Right. Whereas I think the theatrical cut is more like the punk rock version, or the, not metal, but it's just got like a rock sensibility to it. So I wanted to sort of marry the 2 up, and so that became kind of a passion project, because we see different versions of horror movies all the time, but oftentimes it's like maybe a scene stuck in there or something like that. Rarely do we see 2 versions that are so different, whereas even like the last act is like, okay, let's throw the theatrical out the window and let's shoot something completely different. So I thought, wow, that'd be a cool challenge to throw in all the character beats that we love from the producer's cut, honoring Donald Pleasance, but also keep that momentum that the theatrical cut, that little punk rock sensibility that it has, and just marry the 2. So yeah, it was definitely a passion. It's not I don't always do like fan films and stuff like that, but because I'm such a fan of this franchise and Part 6, I thought, let me just try this just for my own sake. I didn't even really want to put it out there for anybody, but I ended up putting it online, and I think 1 or 2 people asked for it, and then I started this YouTube channel, and then all of a sudden everybody wanted to look at it. So it's not something I advertise, get the Blue Myers cut here. It's just a lot of friends will ask me for it. And then, of course, I did a review for Halloween 6, the 3rd review that I did of the movie, that was more about the Blue Myers cut is what I called it. And from that video, I had so many people messaging me saying, hey, let me can I get a copy of that? Can I see that? So, yeah, it's been kind of cool. And I like seeing, the fans digging the cut that I made too. Again, something I never expected, but yeah, a nice little bonus, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes sense, because I think with the theatrical cut, there's just scenes missing that actually create logical plot holes. So you adding them in actually just makes for more of a cohesive narrative anyway. So it's really cool.
Yeah,
and it's really cool that you did that. So that brings us to today. Like, I like to think of these Storybreaker sessions like we're hanging out, and then the studio executives pull us into an office and go, hey, we hear you have a take on Halloween, and we don't, but we have to like make it up on the spot. So it's kind of like the spirit of this. We're like, of course we do. You go in all piss and vinegar, full of confidence, and we're like, we have nothing. Yeah, but we can't tell them that. So that's kind of the idea. So I guess the question is, with all the various strands and all the options available, like prequel, sequel, reboot, where do you want to take this? Do you have a preference on if you had to take a stab at making a shape out of the next installment, what do you think we should do?
Well, I think there's 3 different routes that you could possibly go. One being the Corey Cunningham route, even though Corey Cunningham, you know what, technically they didn't show any time. The rule in these movies is if you don't see a body in a freaking body bag and buried in the ground, then they're not necessarily dead. And
Right.
sometimes even that is not enough to get them fully dead. So Corey Cunningham could technically come back. So that's your first option, to introduce a new Michael Myers, because, you know, it's really about the evil taking over a body. It just happened to be Michael Myers for 13 movies. So that's one route you could go. The second route you could go, and I think this might be my preferred route just because I'm such a fan of Jamie Lloyd. And I know Daniel Harris has been lobbying for this forever, but I think the fan in me would love to have a Jamie Lloyd story where she gets to wrap up, you know, her side of things. The only hiccup in that is Myers' age at this point. If you set it in the modern day, then, I mean, they were already making jokes about Myers' age in the David Gordon Green trilogy. So to take it even further, and he's like probably 70 now, that would be a stretch. But again, this is a supernatural entity. So, you know, and we've had older killers in the past, you know, the Prowler.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would be my preferred. But then one that I wouldn't be mad at is if they actually just did a kind of a soft reboot, you know, and started the whole thing again. But my only caveat was I would love it to take place in like the 70s, you know. I'm not against it being a modern day type thing, but man, I just love the look and feel of those, you know, those early 70s, early 80s type movies. So I think if they could go that route and make it in the 70s and just do a fresh reboot, honestly, I'm not against them getting rid of Laurie Strode, although I'm kind of tired of the character. But if it's not Jamie Lee Curtis, you could still kind of rewrite the character if you wanted to, like Rob Zombie did.
Yeah.
I wasn't the biggest fan of Scout Taylor Compton's version of the character either, you know? So, yeah, I think those are kind of the 3 options that I could go with and be sort of, okay, I'm interested. Let's see where we go from here.
So when you say you're more interested in the second one with Jamie's character, how would you envision that? Would that be it's picking up in modern times? Like at the end of Halloween 4, she's a child dressed like a clown after stabbing her mother. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was her foster mother, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it ends similar to the beginning of Halloween. So if you wanted to set it in modern times, you could have the same thing play out, that she's been institutionalized and then cut to modern times. It doesn't even need to be said as 2025. You can say her age, so I don't mind the mechanics of that. But you basically have a new version of the original Halloween kicking off
Pretty much,
from
yeah.
the 4th one. Is that what you were thinking whenever you were highlighting you'd like to do something with Jamie?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to retcon 5 and 6.
Yeah,
especially
completely.
6, because she dies in 6. But interestingly enough, Danielle Harris was recently on a podcast, the Talks from the Crypt podcast, and she addresses part 6. She says in her mind, that's not Jamie Lloyd. That because in part 6 you had this whole cult thing and there was a lot of kind of conspiratory type stuff going on in that movie. So it's not a far stretch to say, hey, what if Loomis had somebody take the real Jamie Lloyd and hide her away, kind of like a witness protection type thing.
Right.
And kind of scapegoat this other character by the name of Jamie Lloyd and put her in that world, which is what they, J.C. Brandy, they recasted her instead of Danielle Harris. So it kind of fits, and I think it's something that you could buy, but of course you got to get into the whole Court of Thorn weeds. But yeah, I think you have to retcon 5 and 6, to be honest, and I think you have to just act like 4 existed, and then probably a modern day approach if you want to cast Danielle Harris, who still looks pretty young for her age. But yeah, I think you have to, like I said, the only workaround is Myers' age. If your audience can look past that, then I think you might be fine.
So you're thinking Because I'm very actually interested in this idea of continuing from the fourth one, because that felt like a conclusion, like a nice loop, but it also felt like, well, that's kind of logical that you'd want to go that route then, and they just went, nope, we're going a completely different direction. But so you're thinking that with a modern day Jamie, you'd still bring back Michael Myers as the killer, or would you have her as the killer?
You know, you actually bring up a good point. And I tell you, I think one of the biggest things that people hated about Halloween Ends was the treatment of Michael Myers. So you have rabid fans that are so obsessed with Michael Myers, as am I, but I'm always open to the story. I think the story should take, front and center, I guess. And so I'm not so opposed to it being a different killer, which is sort of the reason why I mentioned Corey Cunningham at the beginning of this. And again, but I'm not against Myers being in there either. He would just, of course, of his age, he would be freaking like 70 years old. So I think to please the fans, I think you kind of have to go with Michael Myers. There are fans that they will not accept not having Michael Myers, and I get that. I completely understand that. So I think preferably you kind of have to go with Myers. I don't know. What do you think?
I could see, well, for one thing, you'd have a lot of backlash by leaving him out. But for the other, it's like we are continuously rehashing this and muddying the water. So I probably would enjoy extending because in the end of the fourth one, he passes it on to her anyway. So I'm interested in exploring that. However, you can always bring them both together. There's a variety of different ways you could do it. So I imagine at the end, after the camera stops rolling in the fourth one, she's probably brought to a mental institution, basically treated like Michael Myers. It's just, if we wanted to make that the next installment, are we saying that she escapes and she still has that kind of bloodlust on Halloween night? Or are we saying that Myers is coming to get her again all these years later? I'm kind of interested in the idea of her escaping, to be honest, giving her a bit more agency rather than you ended with her getting that evil presence transferred into her. To have her then basically become the protagonist who's running away from the bigger villain kind of feels like you're skirting away from what you did in the fourth one anyway. Yeah,
I think because that the evil was transferred, I think there's some sort of connection that stays with them. You also have to if you're going with Michael Myers, you also have to kind of establish where has Myers been for the last, 35 years, whatever it is. That's something from a writing standpoint that you have to try to work up because the audience, they got to buy it, like Myers just kind of just showed, but I mean, Myers does have a history of just kind of laying dormant until something triggers him, which did happen in Halloween 4. He was dormant for 10 years, just laying it on, in Smith's Grove Sanitarium. And then as soon as he finds out that he has a niece, you see his fist like clench. And then, that's it. So with a character like Myers, I think you can get away with something like that. But yeah, I think Jamie Lloyd, she probably has a family now. Living her own life. She probably doesn't live in Haddonfield. And then there's a connection there. And I think something awakens Myers, but it's not necessarily her, but she senses it. She senses that, oh shit, he's awake. He just, kind of like she did at the beginning of Halloween 5 when she realized that she was killing the hermit, or that he was killing the hermit. So I think something has to trigger her, actually. And then she feels like, oh shit, I have to go stop this. And maybe she leaves her family behind and she goes to try to stop it. Kind of a twist. Usually it's Myers coming after the protagonist. What if the protagonist is coming after Myers to stop him from killing? Because Myers doesn't just kill his family. If you're going with that particular scenario, he kills anything that's in his way. So it's Halloween night. She's like, I got to get back to Myers. I got to kill him once and for all. And then really that's there's your story.
I want to throw you a different idea and see how you feel with this. We can play with this if you want or go back to she has a family. But what if she, in the fourth one, is institutionalized, and then all these years later, she escapes, just like Michael Myers did. She goes back to Haddonfield, Halloween night, kills somebody. That awakens Michael Myers, and now you have two killers on the loose.
Wow.
And you have a protagonist then, a new protagonist who's trying to figure this out, but you now have like a couple of pinballs banging around, and they start, I guess, a little bit of Corey Cunningham with the two killers, but they kind of dropped the ball with that a little bit because it was muddy and confusing. I would actually have it more like they start competing with each other, or they start getting in each other's way more and more, and it just becomes quite chaotic. I think you're adding a nice new layer there. You're extending the Jamie's presence of evil within her scenario, and then you could take it from there. Do you think that would be an interesting take, or would you prefer to go, she has a family and she's the protagonist?
You know, honestly, what you say kind of intrigues me more, just because we've been down that road so many times where somebody has a family, and then Myers is... It's funny enough, I've been going through the Halloween franchise, again, because it's October, and I was like, hey, you know what? I've never went through all of them, including Halloween Ends, so why don't I start doing that? And I literally just finished up the Halloween 6 Producer's Cut right before we started this. And when you watch these movies in a row, it does kind of dawn on you, like, I feel like I'm sort of watching the same movie over and over. You know?
Right.
It's Myers coming after a family member, and we have to stop him. Yeah, the tone of these movies is quite different. Halloween 2 happens to be in a hospital, which I think is a nice change of pace. But all in all, it's still the same story over and over, which kind of confused me about the reaction to Halloween Ends. Yeah, it's not a perfect movie, but I enjoyed the idea of, okay, if you've watched 12 movies in a row, and they're all pretty much, besides Halloween 3, kind of the same thing, I think if you did that in a succession, I think Ends would actually be kind of refreshing.
Yes.
So what you're saying, having kind of full-on evil being Michael Myers, and then sort of like half-in, half-out evil with Jamie Lloyd, because I believe she's probably struggling with this demon in herself, and it's not fully taken over. And then you gotta have another protagonist. I don't know, it could be a descendant of Loomis, somebody like that.
I like that. Yeah, that's really interesting.
You could have like Loomis's like son, or even Loomis's grandson taking the reins, and now he's got to stop two of them because he wants to honor his father's or his grandfather's legacy, and for himself he wants to. I need to put an end to this once and for all. But now I got two of them I have to deal with. I think, man, from a writing standpoint, you could come up with some really cool ideas in there. But I do think you got to be careful, because when you're juggling two different killers, it's hard to do that and to successfully get away with it. Funny enough, I was just watching this fan film called Friday the 13th Vengeance, and they threw Jason Voorhees' father in there, Elias Voorhees. And so you have Jason Voorhees and his father going around killing people. And it feels like Elias Voorhees doesn't really serve much of a purpose, and he kind of gets in the way of, Jason's like the main course, right? So I think that you could run into issues with that if you do that. It could almost feel fan fiction-y. And I could never, ever see Malek Akkad going for that. Right. I think he would want to keep it. Even his father, Mustafa Akkad, was always like, we need to go back to the basics. He would go so far down the road, and then you get as far as like a Halloween 6, and then they're like, okay, how do we ride ourselves out of this storm? Let's reset. Let's do H2O, and let's, originally they weren't even going to have like Jamie Lee Curtis back. They didn't think they could get her back. And then I guess somebody asked her, she said, hey, it's the 20-year anniversary. Why don't we do this? And she kind of saved the franchise because they were literally going to go direct to video. So her coming back kind of reignited the franchise, put it back in theaters. And so I think that's what Malek Akkad would always want to do. If we're sitting in a writer's room with Malek Akkad and the producers, I think when you go down that road to having, okay, Jamie Lloyd is also a killer, I think the most you could do is to not have her actually kill somebody, but her to be sort of fighting the urge fighting that evil that is within her, maybe 10%, something like that. But you always have to have Myers as the 100% full-on threat. That's what I think. If you want to get the movie actually made.
Interesting. So I really like the idea of Loomis's son, and actually, if that could actually be the catalyst for her getting out, is he comes to visit her to see like what happened. Like he just wants to understand the legacy of his father, and his presence triggers her, and that kind of snappiness happens to her, and she breaks out, and everybody is fearful that, oh my gosh, like she has the presence in her. We know where she's going, Haddonfield, and it's like you're rippling the original. You're having that echo play out. Now, it depends on if you wanted her to have that moments where she killed people, because then that could awaken Michael Myers, or you could say his escape did. Because if we went your route, her escape wakened Michael Myers, he comes to town, starts killing people, and they're looking for her, so they're not looking for him. So she's getting blamed for all of this, while she is desperately trying to hold that in. She is just trying to get home and try to figure out what's going on in her mind. And meanwhile, Myers is back, and and they're all on the hunt for her. And even when they see her, they chase her. And she's like, I don't know who's doing this, Maybe she encounters Michael Myers midpoint, And then I think you actually have a really nice redemption ending with her being the one to take Michael down. And you could, if you wanted a really nice ending, that would kind of absolve her of the evil inside her, and it gives like a familial death to Myers in this. So you tied her, you've completed her story with the actress originally from it, and you've introduced a new Michael Myers story. You have him die in it, but you can always bring him back because he's been blown up, he's been shot to bits, he's been stabbed, he had his head chopped off. So there's ways you can go about that. But what do you think of that kind of cadence, that structure, if we wanted to go forward?
I think it's good. I think you have like with the character of Jamie Lloyd, there's kind of a compounding issue there, because at the end of 4, she is touched by the evil. So the town of Haddonfield would pretty much cast her out, not only like, mentally, but also physically. She would literally have to leave Haddonfield. So I think you saying making it a redemption story, all the pieces are there in place, because the town doesn't trust her whatsoever because of the evil being passed to her. The evil is always attracted to, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, damaged goods, right? If like Corey in Halloween Ends, because of what happened to him at the beginning, the town, you get that small town vibe too, where everybody is very judgmental. And I think that's what would happen with Jamie Lloyd. I think her whole life, there'd be whispers around town. If you saw her walking in the grocery store or somewhere like that, oh my God, that's that girl. She stabbed her. It would be the stuff of like true crime. Like in the modern day, you would see YouTube true crime creators making videos on Jamie Lloyd. You could literally have stuff like that in there. So she can never get away from it. So this would be the opportunity for her to face it head on with actual Michael Myers, and her actually saving the day, and in a sense sort of saving herself and becoming the savior of Haddonfield. So I mean, if it's written right, it could be great, actually.
Interesting. So do we say that we want to kick it off similar to the first one, where she's in detention, Loomis shows up, you've got your protagonist right there, recognizable name, like understandable, that triggers her to escape. She's going crazy with this kind of split, or this pressure to do things she deep down knows is wrong, but she's been fighting it. But she escapes, gets to Haddonfield, that awakens Myers, since we've seen in the fourth, like we've seen it, was it the fourth one where you're talking about he closes his fist, like with her presence?
in the ambulance at the beginning,
Yeah, so you just have him awaken, you know, maybe a bit like, I forget which Friday the 13th, but, you know, lightning bolt hits and Jason comes out. Minus lightning bolt, that can just have him just come out from the ground. You know, he's basically literally been dormant. He's been shot to bits and just resting. Like, he went down in there and they were like, done, whatever. He's buried. He pulls himself out of the grave and he comes back, you know? And that kicks off the story. Now she goes back to town, and now you're getting a lot of what you're talking about, where she's just trying to like kind of find her balance, get some clothes together. She's a bit scared. She gets spotted. People recognize her. They're fearful of her. You know, like there's misunderstandings. And then around probably, let's say, the end of the first act, Michael probably kills somebody, and she shows up and they're like, it was her. And she's like, I didn't. No, I did. And she runs away. And like, there you go. That's your entire structure is now set up. They think
then you're off and running.
They think that she's the new shape. And she's basically like now, and Loomis comes to town and he's trying to be like, I don't know, like she seemed conflicted. I'm like, maybe he has this feeling that it might not be her, so he's kind of on her side a little bit, which could actually be a nice ending. Like they may not have to be romantically together, but you could end it with them standing next to each other, like a Loomis, an heir to Loomis, and a familial tie to Michael Myers standing next to each other is quite a wild visual at the very end, you know? And you're like, it gives you options to go forward with it or just end it there for good.
Yeah, and I'm really surprised that we haven't went with kind of an heir to Loomis, because Loomis is such an interesting character. And I think if you take his son or his grandson, it sort of re-injects new life into the franchise. I've always missed not having Loomis in the franchise. And funny, you know, I just finished Halloween 6, and that's the last movie with Donald Pleasance. And every time I go through this franchise, as soon as I get past 6, I'm like, man, he's that missing ingredient. I think Loomis is just as important as Myers. So it kind of shocks me that you don't have a Loomis type character. And they try, like in the David Gordon Green trilogy, they tried to make Laurie Strode kind of the new Loomis, you know, somebody to help warn people about this evil, but it just doesn't work. And in Kills, she's bedridden the whole movie. So I think they really missed out on that opportunity. And I also think Sartain, I don't know how much of the David Gordon Green trilogy you remember, but like Sartain, when I originally saw Halloween 2018, I thought they were setting up Sartain to be kind of an alternate Loomis, but I liked what they were doing because he was almost like a Bizarro Loomis, like the bad version of Loomis, but he's also just because Loomis is a little psychotic himself, but luckily he's on the good side of things. Yeah. And Sartain was kind of on the bad side of things. So I've always loved when they have a Loomis type character that's effective in these movies. And I think if they have like Loomis's heir, I think that could really add a missing ingredient that we really need in this franchise. And I also think it all comes down to the execution too, getting the proper director. I think you need a director that sort of emulates Carpenter's style in the first movie. There's just a certain feel to the first movie that's not in like say a lot of the later sequels. Even the David Gordon Green trilogy. Carpenter just had this air of like I don't know, there's just a really creepy vibe. You know, even if the frame was sitting still and there was nothing going on in the frame, for some reason you felt a sense of unease. Whereas when I watch H2O, I get a sense of CW, you know?
That's very true.
Yeah, it just, there's not like this like evil chill running down your spine when you're watching H2O. And I think that's part of the secret ingredient of what makes Halloween work, the franchise. Because Michael's evil. He's pure evil in human form. And so there's a little bit of like a possession, almost a possession type factor, even though, you know, I guess he is kind of passing. It's sort of a form of possession because he passes that evil to, you know, Jamie Lloyd. He's done it to Corey Cunningham. So I think I love when this franchise really hones in on that evil and say, hey, Myers is one of the scariest killers in horror history. What makes him so scary is that evil and that question mark, because they only give you just a little bit, and only Loomis is able to tap into maybe that 2% of Myers that might be good. Nobody else can. So to discard that type of character, like what if Loomis's son has that thing that Loomis has, and he's able to tap into that Michael's psyche a little bit,
And
That's
he
the
taps
stuff that's
into
always
Jamie doesn't have it like Michael has it. He
Right.
can see there's something different about her. Like it's there, and then you have kind of another echo of Donald Pleasance Loomis, where you've got the son, the new Loomis, who is starting kind of getting a bit frantic and frazzled because people aren't listening to him. They're like, she broke out. There's deaths on Halloween. Like, it's her. And he's like, I don't think so. Who else do you think it is? What, Michael? He's back. He died 30, 40 years ago. It's such a long time. So, and I love when a story, even for the audience, I actually understand why they don't believe. It makes sense that they're going, no, that's crazy talk, because he's going off of intuition and going, trust me on this. My father knew Michael more than anybody. I look at her, I feel there's something, but I feel there's something in this town, and it's not Jamie, And I think that's super interesting as a scenario. And also for me, I think for this one too, I don't like a Halloween film when there's no trick-or-treaters. Like H2O, I understand, but I'm like, where's the trick-or-treaters?
This doesn't feel like Halloween.
Like when 2018 came out, like that amazing trick-or-treating like one-shot, I'm like, that's so good. Because whenever they lose that or it gets too convoluted, I'm like, you actually want to go back to those moments where there's kids walking around in costumes and there's a killer on the loose, because that's so primal, that's so terrifying, especially now as a parent, to be like, oh no, actually no, you're I'm going with you, we're going door to door and trick-or-treating together, So I think there's something there. Great. So let's follow this thread.
I think Mustafa was onto something there as far as getting back to basics, because I think you need 3 or 4 things to make a really good Halloween movie. You got to have a Myers that's really effective, really evil. I didn't think H2. I know that I didn't mean for this to turn into the H2O bashing, but I don't think that Myers was too scary. You have to have that fall, autumn leaves type. It's got to feel like Halloween. It's got to feel cold. Not like snowy cold, but it's got to feel like there's a chill in the air. And you really have to nail the score. And I think only a very few of these movies have nailed every single aspect that you need in these movies. And so it almost doesn't matter what the story is, as long as you can nail those things and you don't get too crazy in the weeds. But I love the idea that you're saying that, you have Jamie Lloyd and everybody's against her. She looks like she's guilty of a murder. And the only saving grace she has is Loomis's son, that character. And that's simple. That's pretty simple. It's not getting too crazy with like conspiratory type things and whatnot. It's just a basic survival type story. And it's kind of perfect for this day and age. I think they were tapping into some of that in Halloween Kills with, the town of Haddonfield almost could be like, social media and the internet and right. How everything these days is you have to pick a side. It's either this or this. And you could almost see social media, just completely pouncing on Jamie Lloyd. And you have somebody that's the purity, the soul, a pure soul like Loomis's son that doesn't get affected by all that. He pretty much looks at everything in basic terms, good and evil. He doesn't see evil in Jamie Lloyd. He actually sees the good in there, but he sees that she is very troubled by the evil and what's going on, and the evil being Myers, but also the evil being society and social media and all that. So I think if done right, it could be very, very effective.
Yeah, I agree. So if we take it from the top, we begin with the new Loomis visiting to look at Jamie, to understand his father's legacy. That, and we also introduce her as this troubled mind who's really trying to keep the evil at bay. You could probably even have like a confrontation scene in the ward itself, and she barely stops herself from killing an inmate. So you're like, oh wait, so we've set up that she's trying desperately not to kill. Then Loomis shows up, and something in her just kind of like snaps, and she escapes. Maybe she kind of blacks out and kind of awakens, and she's like at the road sign for Haddonfield, which is quite a nice striking visual. And like once she crosses that line, then you introduce then that awakens Michael Myers, which is quite nice. So you're like, these lineage of these characters are connected, and it always has been this mysticism, this magical supernatural element except for 5 and 6 isn't really defined, which I'm cool with. Don't need to define it. So then you have
here's a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Because what if Jamie Lloyd has an item, something to kind of center her, because that evil is still trying to, and this is always good when you're talking about, for script writing. What if she has an object? What if it's like a little locket that's like a picture of her mother or something like that? That when she starts feeling that evil start to take over, maybe she wears it around her neck and she just kind of pulls it up and holds on to it. And, by looking at that, it's sort of kind of like, it's almost like a meditative type thing. It just kind of centers her back to reality. And that device could be cool, because what if it's somewhere along the way she loses it, or it's ripped off her neck or something like that, and then she's got to figure out a way, because now I don't have my binky or my little teddy bear that keeps me safe. I've lost it. It kind of reminds me of when we tried to wean our son off of his teddy bear when he was little. So yeah, what if she has this locket or something like that, and it's Laurie Strode, and she remembers what Laurie Strode was fighting for. She says, I have to do that too. And so this gives me that strength. And if she loses that, that could be another element in there along the way that could, heighten the tension, I guess. But
absolutely.
Yeah. I just had that thought as you were talking about that. But yeah, carry on.
No, it's an excellent idea. I can even see very cinematic. Like she looks at it and then she just squeezes it and holds it and chants to herself and and calms herself down. So it's kind of like settling a panic attack, but it's warding off evil,
Yep.
So yeah, love that. We're keeping that. And I actually also love the idea that she loses it, because then that'll push her to the brink of, in Haddonfield, will she become what everybody says she is? And she, without her safety device, without her safety net, it's going to be tougher than ever. And maybe that is actually a case where she's about to kill somebody, and then the person dies in front of her, and Michael Myers is standing behind that person, and he's after Jamie. And that's when they're face to face for the first time, which is quite unique. It's got that classic cinematic feel where you think she killed him, but then you kind of cut out wide, and the knife is still in her hand. The person goes down behind them. The original evil himself, the shape is there, and she wakes up from this. They lock eyes, you can have that kind of flashy internal mind thing. She awakens and she runs, and now he's after her, as well as Loomis after her, as well as police are after her, and everybody's zeroing in, and all she wants to do is probably get back to the home where she attacked her mother. Are we saying she killed her mother? Because that was the premise I understood in the fourth one, and then they retcon that in the fifth one to be like, oh no, she was
in the fifth one
stabbed.
in the fifth one they pretty much say she just injured her foster mother. She didn't actually kill her.
Right.
So, and you know what? Maybe you'd keep it that way, because if she did kill her, maybe that's the evil fully. Because murder, that's hard to come back from, and that's the evil fully taking over, at least thematically.
Yeah.
Whereas that glimmer of hope with her is that this foster mother didn't die. So I think you could actually keep that in there.
That's true, because I just think as a target location, because again, Michael Myers goes back to the Myers house. I could see Jamie wanting to get back to that house, But with her mother still alive, they'll have another face-to-face when her stepmother opens the door and is confronted with with Jamie and goes, "I think you're evil," Like, so
Dude,
you have that other
it would be
unique
so
moment.
cool if you could somehow include that house that's in Halloween 4 and 5, the one that Jamie was living in, because it just has such a unique look. It would be so cool if they could somehow infuse that, maybe in the final act. Who knows? I don't know if you remember what that house looks like, but like the Myers house, it definitely has sort of a unique structure to it.
Yeah, I definitely
It's like
remember
the red house.
Yeah. I watched a lot of them together, so they kind of smash, squish together in my head when you do this. Especially because I'm like, wait, no, this one said this and this one said that. So I think there's a lot we've already pieced together, and that happens a lot in these sessions. Is you jump to the end, you figure it out. It's actually nicer if you have a finale in mind early on. It makes your road getting there easier rather than you're just kind of
for sure.
trying to pick it apart. And I think we have a very clear idea of the conclusion. We actually have all the pieces together, to be honest. So I might just kind of carry us narratively to where we are. And then if you want, we can have a little fun with some of the details, some of the kills, because that is a fun aspect.
You got to have good kills.
We've got like the themes, the structure quite oriented.
The backbone is pretty much, one thing I was thinking about in as far as like the ending, and this is something that's never really dawned on me but I think the movies that I like the best out of the franchise have the darker, almost like unhappy endings. Like I love Halloween 1. He's gone, right?
Yes.
The evil is gone from here. Halloween 4. She's freaking evil. The worst possible ending imaginable after getting through all this. Halloween 6 has a really bad ending. Halloween Kills. He freaking escapes. He walks into the darkness. I think if you're somebody like me, I think the idea of her not winning at the end of this movie would really send a chill down your spine. After all this, you get it to the point where you think, oh, she's got to win. She's got to be able to defeat the evil. And then the very last thing is, the camera zooming in on her face or the back of her head, and then she turns around and looks at the camera, and you don't oversell it. Her eyes tell the whole story. She looks at the camera, and all you see is the blackest eyes.
I have it actually. To get that ending, you do have her defeat Michael Myers. You do have her stand with Loomis. You have that, and then her stepmother, they meet each other, and the stepmother goes, like, finally understands. Oh no, like it's out of you. Like, I forgive you. They embrace, and then as they're hugging, you get that moment, and then you cut.
You
to
can
black.
even go even further, and she actually finally kills her stepmother.
Exactly. Yeah,
that would be freaking. I mean, her stepmother lived through the whole thing, and then you almost forget about the stepmother. And then the very last scene in it, after she's defeated Myers, is she goes to visit the stepmother, and then she kills her, and then she turns around and you see the evil. I mean, I don't even know if you have to show that, but by killing her, there's no question. Oh my God, she's fully crossed over now.
What you could even do, I imagine, is if you wrote the script, you include the whole thing, but you give in the production, you give that moment. So it's like you have in the edit the choice of like, do we end it here or film the actual death? Because it could actually be a really cathartic moment where she comes in, she apologizes, she's like, I'm so sorry, and the stepmother goes, it wasn't you, I understand now. I get it. You have that moment, and you're like, oh yeah. And then her eyes go black, as you say, and then you'd want to, like, just for safety's sake, like, have it in the script, have it in production, show it. And then when you get to the edit, you go, is it the button of we know it's about to happen, cut, or like let people go, is she? Oh, no. And I actually think that would be more effective and get people walking out going, oh,
leave it a question mark.
Yeah, we go like, you didn't get to see what just happened because then it's in the audience's mind. But I would imagine you'd want to even just film it because it's very difficult. As a filmmaker myself, you never know until you get to that edit. You want to have those
Right.
options. And
You want to
be
have
there,
every bit of coverage you can imagine, just in case.
But my instinct would be that ending with just her face and the audience going, and then cut to black. It would just leave them in that moment of like, no, she's still evil, you know? And it leaves you wide open to go, where do you want to go next? Like, he could come back. You can now have her on the loose. Like, as a sequel, there's lots of room to play with within that construction right there.
Yeah, you want to leave the audience kind of like foaming at the mouth for, I want to see where this goes. Give me the next story. As much as I love Halloween 6, I think there was so much going on in that movie, and there were so many questions that kind of formed during that movie that the thought of a sequel kind of became exhausting. Just think, like, where do they go with this? Because they have, like, little baby Steven, you know, a little child. So I think, again, bringing it back to Mustafa, back to the basics. If you make everything as basic as possible, then that just lends itself to wanting a sequel more, right? Whereas if you kind of overstuff it with, you know, different little subplots, then the audience can grow tired of what's going on. So you just keep it as basic as possible. Really, good versus evil. And I think you have the makings of a really good Halloween movie with and I'm glad we did this, because I've always, wanted a Jamie Lloyd movie, but I've never really thought, okay, let's connect the dots and make all the beats for that movie. And I think what we've come up here is a really cool idea, actually.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a lot, you don't want to riff too much off of what has happened before. However, you do have opportunities with her coming back to town. She knows that, like, she finds out early on that they're after her. But you can have her trying to get back to her home to see her stepmother. And what happens is she sees her stepmother walking, and she basically stalking her. She's kind of like following her, and you get a lot
you kind of see that
of that
POV.
iconography,
Yeah.
where she, like, the mother's walking groceries, turns a corner, and there's Jamie in the background next to a bush, and you're like, this is crazy. And it's logical. It makes complete sense. She's like, I don't know what the stepmother is going to say if she sees me. I don't know what to do here, so I'm going to tread lightly. So I'm just going to kind of follow her home. And you have a lot of that famous iconography with another, with the niece of Michael Myers in the process, which I think is delicious. You have to be cautious of not overdoing it, but I think if you were to write that out, I have a feeling that would actually land quite nicely, because it's logical. Like, narratively, it makes sense, and then maybe
you're also getting kind of a premature reaction from the audience. Like, they're kind of forming in their own minds, oh my God, could she end up, repeating the steps of her uncle, just because of a POV, a certain camera angle that's synonymous with this franchise of the stalker. If you set that up after the big finale with her, oh my God, is she actually stalking her foster mother, or is this just kind of a play? What they're doing, they're trying to play with the audience's expectations, inserting a little question mark in there.
I could even see that exact scene playing out like this, where that she's trying to go there to make amends, to be like, hey, look, I understand. And she's following her. She gets to that point where you have that moment where the mother turns the corner, there's Jamie, like, waiting at the bush, and then she has that kind of psychotic moment in her head. She clutches her necklace and ducks behind the hedge, so it gives her a justification to hide, because she's like, oh no, it's happening again. Like, in no way do I want to do this to her, but it just feels
then
like
you could have her coming out from the hedge. That could be your last shot.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So I think what we've gotten is she gets to Haddonfield. Michael wakes up. So Loomis is coming to town. He's warning people that she's in town. I think early on, basically the end of the first act, you want to have a kill by that point. but it's Michael who does it. She probably arrives. Loomis sees her. She's standing not above the body, but like around it. And she sees what happens. Does she see Michael there? I think it'd be interesting if she sees him that early. Or do you think that she should be left unaware until like the midpoint? And I think the midpoint is when she's lost her necklace and she's about to kill that person. And fully she's going to. And we have that moment where the person drops and Michael's standing in front of her. Now, like that is a clear midpoint, but is that the first time she realizes Michael's alive, or does she see him after the first kill and now she knows he's in town and she's fearful as well? It gives her a reason to like go and try to protect her stepmom. So it gives her actually a reason to go home, you know, rather than just exclusively go, I'm sorry. It's like, oh no, Michael's back, you know? So how would you go with it?
I think the best way to do it, because you're keeping in line with will she kill or won't she kill throughout. So I think she's got to be thinking about, you can't fully get her there saying, oh my God, I'm going to go kill the person now. I think it's got to be, is she going to do it? And she's questioning herself. Is she going to do it? And she's fighting the urge to do it. And just at the moment where she's about to get to the crescendo of her wanting to do it, Myers steps into the frame and Myers kills the person. And you have the face-to-face. Like, oh my God, he just killed the person that I actually was going to kill.
Yeah.
And then somehow Loomis steps in and is able to help her from that point on.
Oh, I like it.
And so then you have this dialogue throughout, or like inner dialogue, where she's constantly talking, like, I almost killed this person. You know?
Yes.
And it's almost like, thankfully, Myers was there to stop me from killing this person. He did it for me. And so now I have to like wrestle with this throughout. Like, would I have actually killed this person? You know, and I probably would have. But maybe Myers killing that person for me sort of helps her pull herself back, and then having Loomis come into the fold as well. And Loomis is a psychiatrist. And so she's talking to Loomis about, I wanted to kill this person. Yeah. But by the way, Myers is back. He has killed this person. So we got to go figure that out. We got to kill him once and for all. But hopefully I don't want to kill somebody along the way. So you got to, man, there's a lot of subtext that you could play with in this particular story. You know, like Laurie Strode never wanted to kill anybody.
That's true.
I think Jamie Lee Curtis wanted to play on her trauma, but the trauma was never in a way where she wanted to kill somebody. It was just, she was a little bit psychotic. This takes it even further. I want to kill somebody, you know, I was going to kill somebody until the ultimate evil stopped me from doing it.
So I think it goes this way. For the end of the first act, she doesn't know Michael did it, but she arrives, sees the body, she has those thoughts, and she goes, I didn't do that, did I? You know, so she's messed up going, no, it wasn't me, you know? So that kind of carries on. So from the end of the first act to the midpoint, you have her on the run, you have her stalking her mother, and then you have these kind of trick-or-treat scenarios. You have you cut over to Michael, he's killing some peeps. You cut over to Loomis, he's trying to talk to the authorities about, I think something else is here. So you have all of that happening. Midpoint hits, just like you say. And I actually like the fact that Loomis shows up and together they get away, because what's great there is you now have her talking to somebody. Because up until then, she's quite isolated. You have a lot of those kind of hallucination moments. That can get fatiguing, especially for exposition. Or how much can you have somebody speak out loud to themselves? Like, oh my God, I can't believe I almost did it, you know? So there's actually a really lovely scene after that wild moment at the midpoint where they probably hunker down and talk. And there's this moment where they're even bonding together, and she's trying to describe and hyperventilating. She doesn't have her necklace anymore, but he calms her down, and he's basically kind of going like, it wasn't you. And there actually is, I think it's such an interesting concept that she's actually happy Michael did it, so she didn't, but still somebody's dead, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Somebody's dead. That's right.
That is so layered and sick, but again, the audience would understand her mindset. She didn't do it, but I was going to, you know? So then you're actually, that third act, so that's your midpoint. You're basically building towards the third act finale. And what would that be? Is that going back to her house? I think I love the idea that her and Loomis are now in collaboration from this point on. Now, they could separate at the end. Well, actually, no, you said it already. Like, basically, after that moment, they're like, we have to get him. And it's basically they hunt for Michael Myers, which I guess Loomis has always been searching for him. But as we're talking, and you were saying as well, like, nobody really hunted to kill him in that very personal, specific way. Or do I get that wrong? Because there's been a lot of films. I probably have that wrong. But this feels a little different with we're going to put an end to him, like, right now. And now, it's not that Michael's on the run, but, like, they're now trying to use logic and strategy to, like, really catch him. But, yeah.
Well, I think to keep the momentum going, I think Myers, he kills the person. He sees Jamie Lloyd. Automatically something triggers in him because he always wants to kill a family member, which I've always preferred that angle anyway. So Myers is after Jamie Lloyd. And so she's got to hide from him, and she's got Loomis with her. It's kind of like the Kyle Reese, Sarah Connor scenario where they're on the run and they have to kill the Terminator who's actually chasing them. And so it's sort of that type of thing. And another thought that I had, because people love it when you call back the earlier movies, you could even call back Jamie's childhood before the evil took over her. Yeah. And you know, those bastard children in the school, and there's like, Jamie's an orphan, Jamie's an orphan. You could have like little flashbacks of stuff like that sort of, you know, because I think we're all kind of triggered by our entire lives, and maybe a certain moment in our childhood that might have been traumatic or devastating or stayed with us. You know, it could be the smallest thing. Like, for instance, for me, when I was a child, I remember seeing just something as simple as a frog. And I saw something really bad happen to a frog. And I was just maybe like 4 or 5 years old. Okay. And it's something that simple stayed with me to, like, we don't remember much from a certain age, like say 4 and below. We just have little moments that kind of stick out. And I have this little frog that sticks out, this horrible thing that happened to this frog. And so I think that's relatable. I think a lot of people could relate to Jamie Lloyd remembering an instance like that in her childhood where she's crying because her mother died. Because if you remember, at the beginning of Halloween 4, she does briefly talk about how it was less than a year since Laurie Strode had a car accident. You know? And so that's traumatic. And so, you know, even before the evil, because that's why the evil actually takes someone over, because it likes feeding off of trauma. You know, children, adults that have had trauma. Corey Cunningham with the trauma that he went through at the beginning. So I think it would be cool to kind of call back to little moments from maybe Halloween 4 before the evil took over that sort of added to that, right?
I think that makes perfect sense. And you can play it throughout, and then it's kind of embedded in the conversations that happen with her and Loomis. Because, again, he's a psychiatrist himself. So he's prepped for this type of conversation, basically. You know, and, I mean, did Loomis really have much real interaction with Laurie? Like, in Halloween 2, we never get to see her find out that Michael is her brother. Like, it's told from, I think, a nurse to Loomis in a car, and you're like, wow, we didn't even get him telling her that. So we've actually missed out on a lot of the interaction between Strode and Loomis.
Yeah, if you remember, she had, like, there's a scene in Halloween 2 where she has this vision, this memory of going to see Michael when Michael was young. and he like turns and just like looks at her. And then there's another memory where she's talking to her own mother, and or no, she's talking to her actual foster mother, Laurie's foster mother, and she's like, "You're not my daughter." That's what Laurie's foster mother tells her. So she knew that there was some sort of connection, and I think Jimmy telling her about, there's all these little breadcrumbs, right, that kind of lead up. But like you said, I don't think anybody came right out and said, "You are his sister." I think that's something that Laurie sort of just kind of figured out on her own. And I think by the time Loomis got to her, I think in her mind she already knew.
Yeah.
Because she saw Myers coming after her so intently, like he just wanted to get to her. And I think at that point she put the pieces together, and she kind of knew. And then when Loomis got to her, that kind of like sealed the deal.
Yeah, for sure. So that's really interesting. So if we're saying that they get together they run off together at that midpoint, they hide, they reconvene, they know that Michael is after them now, and they'll probably, like, where are we kind of driving to? Is it bringing him to a specific place to like set up a trap, or is it trying to save the stepmother because they think she might also be a target? Maybe Michael goes for the stepmother to lure Jamie out, which actually does feel quite logical for someone like him, because we've seen him like set traps before, or like cut off the power supply and these kind of things. And it brings the stepmother back in. So she's actually now involved in the climax, because we know where we want to go with the ending as well. So you do want to bring her more into the featured scenario. And then you have that scene happen. Maybe it is in that house where she stabbed her mother,
Yeah.
Like that's where it all comes back to this place. And she gets inside and she looks at the stairs, flashback to her as a child with a clown outfit at the top of the stairs.
Yeah, that's great.
Like it's really affecting her. And Loomis is like, "You can do this." She's like, "I don't know if I can. Like, I don't know." And she's really falling apart, which honestly, what a character for Danielle to play. Like that is an actor's dream, to kind of go through these flourishes and these wild swings when it comes to a character like this.
I think that's why she's been literally begging to play the part for so long. I actually asked Danielle Harris, would you ever be up for a fan film if this doesn't pan out? And she told me no, because she thinks it would piss off Malek Akkad.
Right.
You don't dare, and it probably would. That would close the door, and I think that she wants that door to at least stay cracked. And she even pitched the idea of a television series where they kind of tie up loose ends from each different continuity which I think is kind of a cool idea.
That's actually a great idea.
Yeah, because there's so many loose ends in the Halloween franchise. The end of Halloween 6, the end of Resurrection. Hell, you could even retcon Resurrection, the end of H2O. Rob Zombie. All of them kind of have a loose thread that you could kind of tie up. So
I like that idea a lot, actually.
Yeah, I think and not to give myself credit or anything, but I think in one of my streams, kind of like what we're doing here, stream of consciousness night thing, I thought to myself, it's like, wow, what if they actually did an actual TV series for Halloween? Because I think they were just starting to talk about it. Yeah. Where they just said, you know what? Everybody has their own continuity timeline there's people that prefer Rob Zombie. There's people that prefer the Jamie Lloyd, the Cult of Thorn thing. There's people that prefer Laurie Strode. There's at least probably 5 or 6 of these things. Why not make an episode or two and just close up every freaking one of them and give every
and you call it Halloween Ends. Oh wait, no, never mind.
Well, yeah, you don't call it Halloween Ends. That'll piss
It's
off
a perfect title for that series, though.
Yeah,
it actually would be a perfect title. Halloween Ends.
Yeah, maybe Halloween Ends should have been a different title.
Yeah.
Or,
that's hilarious.
Maybe another word for conclusion, something like that. But yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. But I think the door is probably closed for Danielle Harris. And I've even heard through the grapevine that Malek Akkad's already kind of annoyed with her because of how persistent she's been.
Right.
And I think he's got too many different script ideas on his desk at this moment. So it's kind of tough to figure it out. But again, circling back to Loomis, why they don't take advantage of Loomis's heir. You know, that Loomis's heir could literally, like, he's got all the files. He could look through everything. He could study everything. So he could almost like become his father, right? And so he's the really intelligent character of this, you know? And he's the one that sort of figured, you know what? This guy, he killed my father pretty much. And
Yes.
so I want to defeat him once and for all, not for just myself, but also for my father. I want to, and maybe you insert something that Loomis actually told him that he recalls before Loomis died. You know, Loomis gave him some sort of little antidote on Myers and how to maybe tap into him. This is how I was able to tap into that 2%. Use this. You might be able to do it too. And then there's at the showdown, you see Loomis's son, face to face with Myers. He remembers what his father told him, and he uses it against Myers. And it's almost like a dog. It's like something that triggers a dog or something like that, you know?
The Pavlovian response?
Pavlovian, yeah. He's actually be able to use that on Myers through something that is... So then you make the real Loomis, the father, sort of a part of the story, you know? And, why they haven't brought Loomis, the essence of Loomis, back into the franchise, I don't know. Drives me freaking nuts. Rob Zombie's, I don't consider that Loomis. That's... Malcolm McDowell, that's a different type of Loomis to me.
That's true.
It's just so different than what Donald Pleasance brought to the table, and I think that's what you got to do. So yeah,
that's true. But I think what you've just defined there is actually the climax. Now, a few different ways you go about this, but either way, I think it's coming down to this chaotic confrontation. I'm not sure if Michael is bearing down on the stepmother or bearing down on Jamie. I actually feel like the stepmother, Jamie is too far away to actually stop it. And then Loomis comes in with that device, that plot device, that literal device. Maybe it's a recording of the father, because he's got such a distinct voice. Or you hear Michael, you know, and it just stops Michael in his tracks. It confuses him, and that gives Jamie that time to get up there and kill Michael Myers, quote, quote. Just really...
Exactly what I was thinking.
Kill him. I don't know how, because we can figure that out, but like narratively, before we get to the specifics, that's the moment you get to. So Loomis Loomis Jr. has a role with it. You bring back Donald Pleasance with that voice, which is so iconic. And the role plays in that it gives Jamie that moment to save her stepmother, which is the beginning of her story, which was she went to the insane asylum or the asylum for attacking her and nearly killing her. And she, in the end, she saves her, which is a full circle. It also gives the stepmother a moment where she goes, "Oh my gosh, I forgive you," you know, like, and she's like, "The evil isn't with you." And you have that moment where like it feels like visually you've got the kind of hallucinations like being sucked out or leaving, and maybe there's a little moment where you go, "Oh, she's clear-headed," and she's like, "It's gone," you know, "It's gone," you know, like you get all of that ending because we know where we're going with that twist, but you get to that cathartic moment, and that basically is the ending.
And maybe the end is like Myers falling, you know, like he falls down a well at the end of Halloween 4. So because we've done everything up, we freaking grinded him up in like a metal compactor. He's been shot a million times, freaking. Head chopped off ish. So I think thematically it's kind of cool to just kind of see Myers falling, you know, into the abyss, into something. That it's sort of like what they did at the end of Alien 3, you know, where or even Terminator 2 when they're going into some sort of vat or something like that. And that sort of leaves it open too, like he could still survive, you know, something like that. Maybe even Loomis's son has a thing for like bow and arrows or something like that. And as he's falling, Loomis like shoots him right in the heart. And then that's, you know, we assume that Myers is gone for good, right? But we still leave the door open.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of these Storybreaker sessions, it's fun to explore that stuff, but I never really put like, we don't have to figure that out. Like, that's way too much pressure to...
Yeah, usually the studio kind of comes up with something at the last minute. Who knows?
Or a writer sits down for an entire session just to work out what is that. Like, you're right. There's been so many different ways that he's had his demise, quote, quote.
Yeah.
So we would have to come up with a new one. One that looks quite definitive, because, I mean, they've all looked quite definitive and they've squirreled their way out of it. But I'm actually okay, because they blew him up in the second one, right? He fell out the window in the first one, blew up in the second one. You know, like he was not in the third one, shot to bits in the fourth one. You know, like, so we see all these ones. So I imagine the solution is not one of those. Is basically it. You know.
I mean, he's been burned a couple times now too. Like Halloween 2018, he was burned at the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Resurrection, they burned him. So,
trick or treat.
Yeah, mother.
Excellent. So yeah, if you wanted to, we could spend a couple of minutes just spitballing some kills. Like give Michael Myers a couple of moments. It's trick or treat.
Yeah.
It's Halloween. People are out there. He's going to be encountering some people. I've always been curious as to who he chooses to attack, you know? Because on one level, we do say, yeah, it's people who get in his way. And it's like, what? He also does go out of his way. He'll veer off into another direction. And I'm wondering if there was something we could play with that. Like, what if we took a stab at why does he choose to, like, I think
if you piss him off, that's in Halloween 6, Barry Sims says, that pussy Michael Myers, and then when he gets in the van, Myers comes behind. He hears it. So Myers is just smart enough to be pissed off if somebody there's always been this rage in him, but to kind of, if you wanted to throw in a kill that's sort of comedic a little bit without being trying to make it full on comedy. You could have a character in there that's kind of bad-mouthing Myers or something like that, stating that he could take on Myers, I'm not scared of him. And then Myers just happens to be behind him or something like that.
I have one. I actually have a fun kill. There's a teenager, some jock douchebag teenager who's dressed like the clown costume of Michael Myers in the first one. So it's like, I'm him, and he's running around with a knife, and he's not dressed up as Michael Myers the killer. He's dressed up as the boy from the beginning.
The clown.
That would trigger Myers completely. I haven't seen that. You're playing in with Jamie dressed as a clown, with Myers dressed as a clown.
It's perfect.
And that is just right there in the middle of the street, probably with people watching going, oh my God. And you have one of those he's already dead, Krusty the Clown moments where he just keeps stabbing.
Yeah.
It goes on too long, intentionally. Because, that is a big trigger for him to go back to his childhood when the evil basically emerged, if you will. So that could be such an iconic one. I'm actually surprised no one's went back to
they always
clown
have a
version.
character dressed up as Myers. They did it in 5, they did it in Resurrection. And a few of the other ones, they've done that too. But yeah, that's kind of played out. I think you're right. I think you have to have a character in a clown costume. That's a trigger for Myers. And it kind of writes itself.
Yeah. And then she could probably see that. That might be the first one, actually. Because when she shows up, she sees the clown. She was dressed as a clown. So you have this moment where both Myers...
That could be a trigger for her.
Yeah, she's like, did I do that? And she's thinking back to herself as a clown, and it's like, wow, it all quite neatly ties together, and you got yourself a brutal, original kill. It's nothing fancy. I actually think just a dozen stabs, or just an immense amount with people freaking out, running away.
Yeah, you don't have to get crazy with, I think Friday the 13th is more about having the most zany, crazy kills. Yeah, I do like a good kill in a Halloween movie, but it's not as long as it's not lazy, every kill is just a kitchen knife.
Yeah.
I do like when, in Halloween 4, he kills somebody with a shotgun, to kind of showcase his strength, his freakish strength. I like when they do that, but you don't have to have Myers with a chainsaw or anything like that. There's a balance there, I think, that you have to find.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Was there any, if you had that choice, or did you ever think of possible scenarios or deaths in your 35-year relationship with this franchise? Have you ever thought of some kills that you'd love to see Myers attempt or succeed at?
Yeah, and it's usually through Myers is the only killer or really movie character I think that I've ever dreamt about. Literally dreamt about. After I saw Halloween 4, it freaked me out so bad that I was terrified of Myers for a couple of years. And I would have dreams. And there was this one dream that I used to have about him where it would be at a carnival. And he was chasing me in the carnival. And I think just a carnival setting would be kind of cool.
Great.
With Myers. And maybe he uses a post or something like that from one of the rides. And he uses that to impale somebody. I think if there's a visual aesthetic to the kill, I think that, that's even better.
No, I love that. That's a great idea, actually. To put in an entire carnival, but it's Halloween themed. Because a lot of these do that. Even in Berlin, there's these amusement areas, and this month
adds to the aesthetic.
It's flipping. They're flipping it into the horror thematics, and even for children,
that was kind of a cool thing. Have you seen
of
Hellfest? Hellfest was kind of like that, where they're at a Halloween themed type carnival, and the killer's just kind of roaming the carnival, and he's killing people one by one.
No, but I interviewed the writer yesterday, actually.
For Hellfest?
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah. What's the writer's name?
It's Seth Sherwood.
Seth Sherwood, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's insane because I literally interviewed him for this book I'm writing.
That's funny. Yeah.
I teach
Hellfest.
I teach marketing to screenwriters. And I'm writing a book on it, and I'm interviewing writers about their career, their process to validate a lot of the theories. So I interviewed him yesterday, which is crazy.
That is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about
put a carnival in a Halloween movie. I think it hasn't been done before.
We've had the bonfire in 6. I've actually read the first draft of Halloween 6, of the one that got butchered. I know there's been a couple of different ones. And there was so much about the bonfire in that it actually justified it.
That's one of the cooler moments too, especially from a camera work standpoint, because you got Paul Rudd kind of slow, walking in slow motion with the fire behind him. There's a lot of depth in the scene.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I do love 6. I mean, visually speaking, it is one of the most interesting looking movies, and there's so much depth in a lot of the scenes because of the blue and because of the fog and because of the scene that we were just talking about. It's not what would you call it's a fair, a carnival.
Yeah, an amusement park.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. No, I think that would be amazing, and you'd have a lot of fun with you could even whip the camera with kids running around, and him walking through.
Do you like the Jaws type thing where you have the camera cut every time it passes you?
The roller coaster whips past too. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be frenzied, and then you have those moments where he's there, then he's not. Let's get bobbing for candy apples. Oh my gosh, there is so much.
Yeah.
What
if you have a character like bobbing for a candy apple, and when they come up, they come up to Myers' face looking at them, and then he jams something in the side of their head.
There's two friends competing, right? They both go down. One comes up, and the other's head is still down because he's been drowned.
Yeah.
And then he gets attacked from the side. So you get a double hit. You're like, oh no, I know what's gonna happen. Or
maybe he does a shish kebab kill. When they come up, he goes through his head and then through the one he just killed, and then pulls them both up. And there's an apple at the end of he got the apple.
You could actually have it as a great 2-shot. There's a few different ways you do it, either at the side profile or directly underneath them, where you have them, but you actually see the one next to him getting killed underwater.
Yeah.
And then he pulls up and he's like, it's in his mouth. He's like, oh, yeah, what? Again, oh my gosh.
That could be fun.
That is what we were missing, was that set piece. What is a new iconic set piece? And putting Michael Myers stoic, silent, and just steadfast in this crazy light spectacle scenario.
Yeah.
Full of kids racing around.
Finally, Myers in a carnival setting. It just writes itself, man. There's so
I
many
love it.
different kill gags that you could come up with in that scenario. Oh, my God.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I love it. So basically, yeah, I mean, we can continue going from there. Or I think we've actually found the ending. So in general, we actually have reached the conclusion. So what do you think? Are you satisfied with that new
I'd
story?
watch that movie today, man. It sounds great, actually.
Excellent.
This is fun.
Now, what do you think? What should we call it?
I think I don't want to borrow the freaking word from like Halloween Rebirth or something like that, but they already did that with like Jurassic World, and I don't know. I mean, meaning wise, I think Rebirth is a good one, but Halloween Redemption.
They had
be
that
kinda cool.
unmade script called Halloween Returns, which I thought was actually quite nice and clean.
I did. I actually, one of my first videos was a Halloween update on Halloween Returns about Marcus Dunstan.
Oh,
That's
really?
literally like, I did that video 10 years ago, way before the whole David Gordon Green, John Carpenter coming back. And I got, that's kind of the first video that took off on my channel. You know, because I had just started my channel, and that video got like 15,000 views. And so I was like, oh, wow. I thought I was like, I thought Halloween was kind of still a niche type thing. Like, I didn't see people talking about it like they do now back then. And Halloween Returns was something, I've read that script. I even did a script review on my channel a few months after that. And I kind of went into detail on the whole thing, and Myers on death row and everything. And that scene where he's literally going to be killed on death row, and then the lights go out, and all of a sudden just chaos ensues. It was a really effective script, I think. I think there were some really cool ideas in there for sure.
So, Lee, that's it. That's a wrap on our new version of Halloween Returns.
I hope
Thank
it's
you.
made. I hope somebody sees this and they decide to make it and pay us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, first off, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I'm actually really thrilled with that as well. Again, we start this, I have no idea where we're going to go, and that's the fun of it. It's like, let's follow a thread, and I think we actually came up with something quite compelling, quite unique, but fitting, and it does give the Jamie character quite a wrap-up, and also that little tag at the end.
Big time. Thank you for having me, man. This was really fun, Chris.
My pleasure. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, I definitely recommend you leap over to Storybreakers on YouTube and check out the content that we have. It used to be something I ran a few years ago, and we're relaunching now. You'll see some clips of this going online, but definitely go over there, subscribe, because we got a lot more exciting updates yet to come. My name's Chris Brennan. Until next time, have a great day.